We got a bidet!
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's Shoot the Sheev podcast, we are talking about our top 3 favorite Star Wars board games. I don't know if I would say that we have a particular order, just that these were our 3 favorites. Just to kind of give some background on what we've played and what we haven't played so far. Because if you've walked into a board game store or kind of like your local card board game comic book type store, you would probably know that there's tons and tons of Star Wars board games out there. Have not played them all, unfortunately, but we have played a good chunk. So kind of what my experience is from Star Wars board games, when I was younger, I got a handful of the board games that came out during episode 1, episode 2. I don't know if I got any of them from the episode 3 era. But I was kind of that kid that when I played the game, I would try to make my own rules because they seemed too confusing. I would love to learn how to play the games the way they're supposed to nowadays. But
Can you give an example?
like the Jedi Unleashed board game, that is a Star Wars game from Attack of the Clones where it's the Jedi in the arena, and I feel like I remember that there's a rule where you have to stay within your region as a Jedi, whereas the way I played it is that Jedi can go anywhere in the arena, and they can basically it was a see how many droids you can take out before Yoda gets there, because there's like a Yoda tracker where once he gets there, the game is over. So
Interesting.
kind of just did a roll and see what happens until Yoda gets there. And if there was more than one player, well, then we just take turns, back and forth. And then as Yoda gets there, whoever killed the most droids at the end wins. It was a very simple version of the game that I made up. But I would say I did a handful of those types of things when I was younger. I had Star Wars Stratego, which also came out during the episode 2 era. That I knew how to play. So I was able to just pick that one up and learn it. I would say probably the most out there one that I did as a kid was that there was a Star Wars Monopoly game for computer that I think it came with the original Star Wars, like original trilogy Monopoly set. I do not know how you can play that game anymore, just because I don't see it able to find it anywhere online, let alone being able to put it into a disk drive. But that was one of my also first experiences with Star Wars board games, just because I got to play Star Wars Monopoly on the computer. It always seemed really hard just because Monopoly can be very, once you start spending your money, you run a high risk, and I just seemed like to always lose with that game. Did you have any Star Wars games you remember playing as a kid?
I don't think I had any Star Wars games as a kid. Growing up, we played some pretty basic games, and really the only game we played like as a family consistently was Racco, which is not a Star Wars game, and there's not a Star Wars version.
They should
Um,
make a Star Wars version. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
really all you need is a deck of cards, but you need them to go 1 to 60, so easy opportunity.
Yeah, maybe they can do like midichlorian counts and have Jedi attached to the cards. I'm just telling you, Disney, right there. um, yeah, so I don't think there is a Star Wars Racco yet, but it could be, in my opinion, probably an easy thing to do.
I feel like
Um,
the first Star Wars board game I probably played was when you taught me how to play Stratego.
okay, and so for that game there are like the normal rules, of course, but there's also Star Wars rules too. I pretty much played all normal rules, and that's what I taught you as well. Like you can't teach someone an original game without, you know, or teach them extra rules without knowing the original rules. Otherwise, it gets really complicated. Um, we've played some interesting ones as well. There's like a dice game that we played that comes in a cup that has like Vader on one side, I think, and Luke on the other. Um, the Luke face is kind of creepy in a way. But it's a dice game, which we found enjoyable. I think we took it on a vacation trip and played in the lobby quite a bit. That was a trip that you and I took with my sister and my family, I think.
Speaking of family games, I think one of the ones we've played probably the most with like our parents and whatnot is R2D2 Bop It. So
Mm,
it's a
yeah.
3D, think of like a toy, all right, a plastic toy of R2D2, except it's Bop It. So either you bop his head, you pull his legs, or you twist the top of his head, like R2D2 spinning his head to look different directions. So very classic game, but done different because it's R2D2. So that was pretty cool. Trying to see if we could beat each other's high scores.
Yeah, and it's really small too. It's like maybe the size of your fist, maybe a little bit bigger. Um, but yeah, I remember playing that because I think I got that as a Christmas gift from one of your family members. Um, and then yeah, we tried it and tried to beat each other's scores. I do remember I did beat the like beat the game, quote unquote. So I think it only goes up to 100. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of fun. There are new versions out as well. I think there's like a Grogu one or something, which is kind of weird. Like, why would you be pulling on his head or ears or whatever it is?
Maybe you pull his leg.
Maybe,
You pulling my leg there, Jeremy?
but I'm gonna look it up real quick.
So
A
while you're
game.
looking that up,
Yeah, go ahead.
some of the other ones that we've played, I'm going to start with some of maybe the more classic ones. And by that, I mean like classic board games that have been redone into Star Wars versions. So games like we've got a couple different versions of Trouble, Operation, where I want to say our Operation, who is it? Do you remember? Is it R2D2?
I think it's R2.
So very classic game, but done different, right? Because you've got R2D2 parts to take out. Um, Risk is always one of my favorites for the Star Wars version, just because it's different from your typical Star Wars Risk. It's only 2 player instead of a typical game of Risk has what, 6 to 8 players or something like that. You
Something.
can go down to 2, but a max of 6 to 8 players. There's even ones that we haven't tried yet, like Pictionary Air. So you are drawing things in the air, and I don't quite know how this all works because we haven't tried it yet.
I
But
know
you're
how
drawing things, huh?
I know how it works. You're supposed to hold like a phone or a smart device up in like the direction of the person that's drawing, and then the person that's drawing draws it in the air, and then it appears on the device, so you can kind of guess what they're drawing in the air.
Okay. Interesting. It seems like I would want to put my phone on like a tripod or something and somehow cast it to the TV so everybody could see it.
Maybe it has that feature. We haven't played it yet, but from what I saw in the box, that's kind of what I gathered.
Star Wars Clue and Life. I'm not sure that I've played both of these versions. Clue is a game that I love to play, but we always struggle with having enough players because you really need at least 4 players. Otherwise, Clue's not very fun because you need more mystery to it to be able to detect who the killer is. Or
We we did play the Star Wars Clue. It's one of those games that has like different rules. It's not your standard Clue. It was the like 3D one where you're trying to escape the Death Star.
oh, I got you. Okay, that
Um,
sounds vaguely familiar.
yeah, I think we played it like once or twice. It's definitely not like the original. It's got its own rule set. It's completely different.
Do you remember with Star Wars Life, if you're, usually in standard life, you choose if you're going to go to work or go to college, and then you go down the different paths. With this one, is it choosing light side and dark side?
I believe so. It's another one we haven't played yet.
Mm.
I bought it used and it happened to all be brand new on the inside. They just didn't have the shrink wrap on. So that one's an in progress of playing it. There's a lot of pieces, and sometimes when there's a lot of pieces, it can be intimidating. But yeah, it's on our list to play. I've heard it's really good.
One of the other, and this is probably the last one I'll mention in terms of common board games that's been redone Star Wars version is Monopoly. There are so many different versions of Star Wars Monopoly. There's practically one for every movie, one for every trilogy, and probably one for every TV show that they've had. And even then, there's more because I know for Mandalorian, I'm pretty sure they have one from season one and one from season two. So there's a lot of different versions of the Star Wars Monopoly out there, and we've played maybe one of them. That's a
We've
game that takes a long time.
we've played a couple of them at least. Because I know we've played Mando, but let's see.
In terms of ones that we have, we've got one of the Mandalorian ones,
We've
one
played the
that's
Saga
complete,
edition.
the complete Skywalker Saga edition. You've got a Black Series style version one. Um, and then what are the other ones that you think we have?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Um, don't remember entirely. Uh,
Well, we have a couple other different ones. Some of them are still in shrink wrap and they're kind of more collector edition rather than playing, just because they're older and they're not in print anymore.
yeah, one that we have that we haven't opened that fits this category is the Star Wars Episode 1, like collector's edition. We still got it in shrink wrap. I happened to find it at a toy show. That's the word. Which is like a trade show, but it's all toys. And I got it for $20. So I was pretty enthused to get the collector's edition so cheap. Going back to the Bop It situation, there is actually quite a few. I was surprised to see all these. So we mentioned we have the R2D2. There's also a BB-8, so you know that probably came out around the time of The Force Awakens. There is also a Chewbacca, and there's a Grogu that we were talking about. And the one that I'm surprised we probably don't, or I'm surprised we don't have, is Darth Vader. There's a Darth Vader Bop It figure. So there's quite a few of that have come out in the recent years.
We might have to get that Chewbacca one for your sister because that's her favorite character.
Yeah, just might. Um, I think because I feel like I've seen these a handful of times, and I think a lot of the Bop It versions I've seen at Walmart. So if you're looking for a Star Wars Bop It, you'd probably find it at Walmart, but you can always look on Amazon too because they have everything. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. Oh, we have Star Wars Yahtzee, which was kind of an interesting one. Yahtzee Duel. So it's not your classic Yahtzee. The rules are a little different. But what's kind of cool about it is that it's you against one other player, so it's only a two-player game, and you have like all these different pieces of quote unquote shield that are surrounding you, and basically you have to roll a certain sequence of die to wipe out different parts of the shields to eventually get to the other player's character. I think it's Kylo Ren and Rey. And what's cool is that as you go along, some of those shield pieces that you defeat have like little enhancers on the back, like a wild or something. So I enjoyed playing that one as well. But what we got coming for you after our short break is that we will be talking about our top 3 Star Wars games that we've played. And then eventually, after we talk about the top 3 that we've played, we'll talk about some honorable mentions of ones that probably that we have and we look forward to, or ones that we don't have, but we also look forward to them. We'll just have to wait and see when we get there. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. We are here to talk about our first game that breaks our top three for our favorite Star Wars games. Again, no particular order. But this first one that we're going to talk about, when I was going through Amazon one night, and I was just typing in, Star Wars board games and seeing what was new. One game came up that when I looked at it, it said escape game on it, and I was like, does that mean like escape room? Because we had just been getting into going to escape rooms and wondered like, what does a board game version of an escape room look like? And what this game is it's called Star Wars Unlock. And when you look at the box for Star Wars Unlock, you see three things on there. You see what looks like Hoth because you got a Rebel and a Hoth gear on top of a Tauntaun. You also see a space battle. And what's interesting about the space battle is that it has the ship from Shadows of the Empire. So that struck out to me quite a bit. It's a Corellian ship that's similar to the Millennium Falcon, but obviously not quite. And then the third one was a stormtrooper group that's on a tank, I believe. And having those three things on there was pretty interesting. Like it's a weird mix to see. Like maybe first impression you think you're on Hoth, and then you go to space and go to other planets and stuff. But that wasn't quite it from my first impression. I started reading into it more, and basically what this is it's three separate adventures. It's like three separate escape rooms. And the first one with Hoth, you are a rebel, basically trying to, I think you were lost in the caves or something, and you had to make your way out and get on the rebel fleet to, get away from Hoth as the Empire is closing in. The one from space, I think that was you're captured by the Empire and you have to escape a Star Destroyer and get away from the Empire. And then the third one, you might need to help me out with this one, Sarah. The third one, I remember it was like being in the desert and you're trying to find like civilization or something, but because you're in the desert, like all directions look the same. But I will say the third one was way more involved as far as like intricate things to do. Because the first two with these unlock games, you play with cards to try to, maneuver your way through. You put cards together to see what numbers they add up to. And then based on what they add up to, you try to find another card that has that number. And you basically keep going along those lines until you figure out everything to do. But the third one, like, had a paper map and like locations on the map that you could try out. And like if you went to one place, like you wasted your time, and there's like different penalties you can get for going to the wrong places. And you have about, I think, an hour for most of these. You have an hour to complete. Some of the unlocked games that aren't Star Wars have different rules. I think we played one where we were divers, and so I had a timer for how much air you have in your air tank. And so you could find like different air tanks to add back into your time. But I think for the Star Wars ones, overall, they were like a set time and you had to finish by the end of it.
I believe so. I wasn't fully sure on what that third adventure was, so I looked up, and you can tell on the back of the box when you see these in store, kind of like a one-liner of what each adventure is. So for that one, it says Imperial agents recover kyber crystals from the ancient moon Jeddah.
Hmm.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah. So you're the Imperials, so that's why it makes sense why you're stormtroopers, that you're trying to find kyber crystals. Because in Rogue One, that's exactly what they were doing. They were farming the kyber crystals. So yeah, when you play these games, you have to have a smart device because the app is kind of how you maneuver through the game. I know I mentioned already that you use cards to progress through the game, like adding numbers together if they go together, and then it opens up another card so that you can have things to do. But that's not all that it is. There's also different things in there, and this is hilarious. Where I'm going with this. There's like different um, mini game type things you can do on the smart device. One of them is that when you install this app, it asks you for permission to use the mic. And there's a reason. And it's because I believe in the Hoth level, we had to yell for help. And by yelling for help, something happened in the game. The funny part was is that I guess I had the mic turned off, even though I gave it permission to use it. So we were just sitting here yelling at the device, yelling help. And then the device eventually like had a pop-up saying, "Do you need a hint?" And we're like, I thought we are doing this correctly. And we click on it and it says you need to say help. But we did. And there's different things built into the app where, if you're struggling with something, like I forgot to turn the mic on, or if you have some cards out and you don't know what to do with them, there is a hint system where you could say hint and then type in the number of the card, and then it would say, well, did you think about this? Like it'll start with kind of a vague thing, and then if you need more help, it'll give you a little bit more help. And if you still need help, they'll give you the answer. So it's very, very um it's got a lot of layers to it. It's not just you're looking at cards and you're trying to put numbers together. There's a lot that's involved. It's very fun. I don't think we've played with any of our friends and they've said this is terrible or they didn't like it. I think every single person has liked this game. There's been some scenarios that people have liked more than others, but the overall game of Unlock is a huge thumbs up, especially for us Star Wars fans.
Some of
Um,
them can be really difficult too to figure out what they're trying to get you to guess in terms of, like I remember one of them uh there was a picture of stars, right? Like you were looking out your bedroom window and you saw stars. And then on the app, the quote unquote mini game had that same picture of stars and you had to click on certain ones, but you didn't know what ones exactly to click on. Trying to figure out, what was different between the two pictures, and the orientation of the picture was different too, and it made it really tricky. Um, I know it sounds super simple, but we struggled with it, and that's just
well,
one example.
here's an example of one that was hard, and I bet when I say it, you're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, oh my God." We played one that was Alice in Wonderland, and uh, forewarning, that's the word. Forewarning, if you're playing the unlock games, there is a chance. Like if you're kind of a board game perfectionist where you don't want your pieces to be, you know, mangled or changed in any way, unlock may make you cringe at times because there was in the Alice in Wonderland, if you know what Alice in Wonderland is, there's like the heart cards, like King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts type thing. And we had to make a stack, like we had to bend the cards in half, fold them, and then stack them, and then look at it from a certain angle to get the answer. So there's so many. Oh, and we played another one. We had to make a cootie catcher out of some paper. So there's so many things that can happen with this unlock game. It really keeps you on your toes about uh, what cool challenges could be next.
And they have quite an expansive collection. We have
Hmm.
You can buy them in sets of three, where it's a box with three of them in it, just like the Star Wars one. Or you can buy standalone adventures, which I probably would not recommend because it costs about two-thirds the price of a set of three of them together. So you're spending, what is it, like $30 for three of them, or you can get a standalone one for, say, $20. I'd
Yeah.
spend the extra $10 and have two extra adventures, personally. But we have, I don't know, maybe six or seven of those sets of three, and we haven't fully played all of them, but there's still plenty more that we don't have as well. So there's a lot out there in terms of variety for this game.
Yeah, and they're not all like licensed type things either. So like the Star Wars one had all Star Wars in the package, but I mentioned Alice in Wonderland. There's like I think two other adventures in it that are not super popular. Like they're original ideas by them.
I
We
think the
picked,
Star Wars one is the only one that's licensed because the Alice in Wonderland one is kind of more
it's
original
public.
domain version, public domain version.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like,
They're not all characters you'd recognize.
right, like Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz is another one that's, part of these games. Sherlock Holmes is in these games. Um, they're not all like, oh, this is Wizard of Oz, so it's three separate Wizard of Oz games, or this is Alice in Wonderland, there's three separate ones of those. No. Usually, if there's something that's licensed or public domain, popular, I'll call it popular and public domain, if there's something like that, usually there's two other ones with it that are kind of like original ideas by the company. Um, so I think it's cool doing that and keeping it fresh, so to speak. Um,
They have their own original characters too, of this weird,
Mhm.
like, clown type scientist looking guy with this little experimental rat, if you will, where you're playing as the rat trying to escape the scientist. And they have many different versions of those two characters in different scenarios, different houses you're trying to get out of, different experiments that are trying to go on, different weird machines that the scientist has built that you're trying to figure out how to turn off before the world ends. Um, so they have their own kind of quote unquote licensed character that they have that's usually there's one of those in each game set. Is do you remember what they're called?
What's called?
Those two characters. Like I want to say it's Sausage and Mr. Squeak or something like
I
that.
can look it up really quick. Um, I will say while I'm looking that up is that probably my favorite one that is not Star Wars that we've played was a haunted house version, and it was really cool because there was a ton of like 80s horror film callbacks that were involved with that game, and honestly I thought it was really really fun. Oh, side note, Sarah, there's some like good deals on Amazon right now for Unlock. This isn't a paid sponsorship or anything like that, but I'm looking up what those characters are, and there's a lot of like 33% offs right now. Let's see. I have them pulled up. Uh, the clown character's name is No Side. I think Dr. No
That's
Side.
Squeak and Sausage is actually one of the adventures that you can play through. That's why I was thinking of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, this one's it's called a No Side Story. We actually have this one because it's the one with the Wizard of Oz. Um, they have three different difficulties. Each box has a 1-star difficulty, 2-star difficulty, and 3-star difficulty. So it's not like a box of easy ones or a box of super hard ones. Um, I would say they're fairly accurate with their difficulty rating system. I would say we probably played like one that was a 3-star that seemed a bit easier than it was, but overall, we've definitely gotten some hints on those. Um, let's see, there was one more thing I wanted to mention about Unlock. Oh, there was a cool one with that was kind of like Jurassic Park themed in a way, but it was more like the Lost World, where like these people are they went to a dinosaur island and you had to go rescue them. That one was pretty interesting. The only the thing that bugs me the most about when I play these games, because you're on a time limit, right? And it's whenever you get a penalty, especially because when you get a penalty and you push the penalty button, it makes a loud like noise, and it's just when you do it over and over and you keep getting like a sequence wrong or something, and you just keep hearing that noise, it just adds to the tension of being under pressure from the clock. Anything else you wanted to say about Unlock, Sarah?
No, I was still trying to figure out what those characters' names were, the mouse character's name.
Oh,
But that's not important. Um, just overall, I think the games are really innovative and fun. And if you like escape rooms, you're gonna like Unlock. It's a great way to be able to play an escape room in your own house without having to do a whole lot of setup.
And you do need a device that can either use Google Play Store or the Apple Store. Those are the two that currently are compatible with this game. Um, a lot of devices have those, but I will, like I said, forewarn, like if you have a Kindle or something that doesn't have access to those types of stores, you may need to use a different device. Also, one last other thing is that every single unlock game comes with a tutorial set of cards. It's like 15 cards that walks you through how to play the game, so you know what you're doing before you jump into the actual ones that have, a challenge with the 60-minute timer and stuff. So when you go to open this game, they do have a very, very good tutorial set up to get you started for all this stuff.
To
Um,
get your brain thinking too.
yeah, get you going. When we come back right after this, we're going to talk about our next two favorite games for Star Wars. This first one was Star Wars Unlocked, so stick around to hear what other two we have up our sleeve. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in the show? Well, we got you covered because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. Welcome back, everybody. We got our last two favorite Star Wars board games that we've played so far. The next one that I'm going to mention to you is Star Wars Risk. Now, there's a couple of different Star Wars Risks that have been released. I think there's a couple that are very comparable to regular Risk when you think of the original board game. But the one that we've played quite a bit of is not the standard Risk game. We've played the Star Wars Risk. I don't know if it has like a subtitle or a sub name or whatever, but it's basically the Battle of Endor and the second Death Star battle all in one game, where it's only 2 player. There isn't the whole 5 or 6 players, whatever it is for the normal game. It's only a 2-player game. It's the Empires versus the Rebels. And first of all, it does have a lot of cool miniature pieces. There's actually 2 versions of this game. There's the regular version, and then there's I think the Black Series version of this game, which is like a collector's version. We do not have the collector's version, but the collector's version does come with nicer versions of the miniatures, if you want to know what the difference is. But you get a lot of cool miniatures with both games. I'm talking about the original or the cheaper version that we have for right now. You get different pieces of Y wings, X wings, looks like B wings, and I thought there was A wings, but maybe not. And then the Empire just has TIE fighters. But there's also they with the cheaper version like we have, there's cardboard pieces of the Falcon and then of the Super Star Destroyer that was in the Battle Above Endor. If you get the collector's edition, I believe those are actual physical miniatures. But what's really cool about this game is that there's a handful of things going on. Like if you think about when you're watching Return of the Jedi, there's a lot of things that are going on during this whole sequence. The camera cuts between Endor, it cuts between the space battle, and it cuts between what is happening with Luke and Vader and the Emperor on the Death Star. And this game emulates that stuff perfectly. Like depending on the cards that you play, because just like the other Risk game, you do get cards in your hand that you can play and resolve and stuff like that. But depending on what is played, there's different things that can help you along the way. I forget like the specific sequence of everything, but there's like the Rebels win. I think if Luke turns Darth Vader back to the good side, you get some sort of bonus. You do have to take down the deflector shields. before you go to attack the Death Stars, the rebels. Really, the only thing with the Empire is to just wipe everybody out. That's a pretty simple one to remember. Um, but by doing different objectives, you can get separate bonuses that eventually lead to what you are trying to accomplish. Um, we've had a lot of good memories with this game, I will say. We haven't played it in a long time, so maybe we should bust it out again. But I do remember when we first bought this, we played this a lot. We were very, very competitive when we played this game. And there were times where we were wondering if one side was more um, unbalanced than the other as far as like the system, just because one person was winning more with it, and then we'd switch the board and see if the trend continues. You look like you're trying to say something as you're
Go ahead
giggling.
and say it, Jeremy. Just say it.
Say what?
You dominated that game.
Oh, I did dominate this game.
We played so many times because I just wanted to win. And it was so difficult. It was like Fez on that 70s show when he's learning how to play rock, paper, scissors. He doesn't understand that every option has an equal way to win because the other player keeps winning. So I thought, okay, well, if Jeremy and I switch sides, maybe then I'll have a chance at winning. And we'd switch sides, and you know what would happen? You'd still win.
Obliterated. Um, so spoiler alert, Sarah was the reason why we were shifting the board back and forth more times than not. I wasn't gonna say it, but she wanted to. So um
It
I
was
was
still a lot of fun, even as the loser, which is a big step for me to say because I hate losing. I hate it so much, but I liked playing this game whether I was winning or losing. It was just fun to play.
that is a big step for you. The audience should be applauding you for that one. I was actually just looking up to see maybe we could get the collector's edition sometime, but on Amazon they want $140, because it's out of print.
Woo!
So no thank you for
I'll
that.
have to check
Although
out eBay later.
I will say the Death Star piece is awesome. The Super Star Destroyer piece is awesome, and so is the Millennium Falcon. It also looks like okay, there's a handful of things that are a little bit different. The X Wings, Y Wings, B Wings, and the TIE Fighters and all that, those appear to be the same. But there's also, so when you're going to try to take out the shield generator, there's like a long track that you have to progress your troops and stuff. And instead of in the game that we have, they're just little cardboard circles that have like rebel symbols or something on them. I don't remember exactly what, but the point is that they're little pieces of cardboard. In this collector's edition, they're actual like figure characters, like rebel troopers. So that's super cool. The cards look like they're a little higher quality. Um, trying to see. They still have a cardboard circle for Luke Skywalker, so his token. So not all tokens, it looks like, have a nice new uh piece. But there's enough there where it's like, wow, I think I'd rather have that one, but who knows? Who knows? Actually, these little troopers look like stormtroopers for the base, so maybe they were just pieces you're defending? I don't remember. Ooh, I got a picture with all the things on here, but yeah, we covered all the new things that are in the other edition. Um, Unfortunately, there are still a couple of tokens that are cardboard, but it is what it is. Sarah, what is the next or the third Star Wars game that is in our top 3 list that we have played?
Yeah, so our third one is going to be Star Wars Imperial Assault. Um, is there a version of Imperial Assault that's not Star Wars?
I don't think so. Um, I will say before Sarah dives into a little bit of what this game is, this is a game that I was very reluctant to try, um, simply because when a Star Wars game, like a board game, is like $100, like this is, it's scary to jump in, especially when, like I mentioned earlier in this video, a lot of pieces to a board game can be intimidating. That's this game. There's a lot of pieces, and it's a little overwhelming, especially since you can buy expansions and stuff that add more pieces to this board game, which we have bought a good handful of or expansions, and I think I got a handful for Christmas and stuff. Um, but yeah, this is an example of a board game where it is worth it for the money, and you do need an electronic device for it as well. So heads up on that. Go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so like he was just saying, you do need an electronic device. I would say a tablet is much a tablet slash computer. I think a computer would work, but at least a tablet versus a smartphone, just something with a bigger screen, would be helpful for this. Because essentially what it is you go to the app or the main page for it on your electronic device, and it gives you a scenario of, hey, here's what's happening in the Star Wars world. You're going to try to rescue somebody. You're going to try to get something that, like, you're stealing equipment from the Imperials or something like that. I don't remember all the scenarios. There's tons that we haven't played yet. So we've only played a couple of these. So I'm just kind of making these up, but they're all somewhat like this. You're going to investigate a certain rebel base or something, try to take back something from the Empire, something along these lines, something to get you started, right? Then you have the map pieces. It's not a typical board game where you just have one stationary map. These are map pieces that have a grid on them and are played very much like a D&D map, where you have a puzzle piece of map section that, say, has 6 squares on it or 12 squares on it or maybe 20 squares on it. They're all different sizes and shapes. They have different terrain on them. Some are outdoor, some are indoor, some are jungle, some are desert. There's different hallways or nooks or crannies or barrels to hide behind that are drawn on these map pieces. But the app tells you exactly what pieces to grab, and they have numbers on the back of them so you know what piece to go find. They tell you exactly how to orient them, and then usually there's like a doorway that you are trying to get to before you are able to put more map pieces down on the table. So the start of the game is your objective and the map, right? So you have your player tokens that you can put on there. Most of these are actual minifigures, maybe, I don't know, 2 inches tall, something like that. They're not like crazy big.
Some of them can be big. Like there's a Rancor one that's pretty hefty, but it's because they're trying to do realistic sizing to the people.
Yes. Yep, exactly. So they'll tell you where to set your characters to start, or at least a general area, and then they'll say, all right, there are stormtroopers at these 3 spots. You need to get to the door. And it's a turn-based game where you can move a certain number of moves. You can do an action like trying to shoot one of the stormtroopers. And then once it's their turn, they can do the same thing. And it's kind of on the honor system in terms of, if you want to play the game realistically, the stormtroopers are after you. They're not just going to sit there and twiddle their thumbs. So you actually have to play both sides of this a little bit. There'll be loot crates that you can go after to try to get different bonuses or maybe different weapons. There's a currency system to get your player upgrades for like their health and whatnot, and med packs. There's every once in a while, because you're telling the app when you're done with your turn and when they're done with their turn, meaning your 2 characters that, well, for Jeremy and I would be playing with 2 characters. So you tell them when those 2 characters are done, you tell them when the enemy characters are done, and then after a certain number of turns, and this is completely random, sometimes they will say, all right, the stormtroopers called in reinforcements, and they'll say to put more enemies in different places. And it's a different game every time. That, I think, is one of the greatest appeals to this game, is that the game tells you how to set it up and where to put these things, but it's a different adventure all the time. You're not playing the same story over and over. And as you get these expansion pieces that Jeremy was talking about, how we have a handful of them, you tell the app, like, hey, I've bought expansions ABC. And so then they will know that those characters are okay to immerse into your game.
Mm-hmm.
That way they know not to give you, say, a Lando character suddenly appears if you don't have the Lando character. That way you're not, it's more of a smart app, I guess, if you will, how it knows what you have. So, what did I miss anything? Does that kind of sum it up, you think?
It sums up one of the two ways of playing the game.
Okay.
Because there's the way that Sarah was mentioning where it's kind of almost like a role-playing game and the device is the dungeon master, quote unquote, that's telling the story. You can also play it where somebody is physically the dungeon master and they are creating the story. I think that's the way that this game started, and then the company came out with the app. I guess I can't be quoted on that just because I haven't dived into it too much, but I believe that's the way it went. Um, but yeah, it's a very cool game. The thing that drew me to it the most was the fact that, like you said, it generates things all the time. And when you buy an expansion, you tell the device, "Hey, I have this," and they start to throw those things in there. I think that's really cool because what that tells you, I mean, that's proof in itself that it makes things different all the time because you could play a full campaign with just the starter set, or if you buy an expansion where you have like Boba Fett, the Rancor, or the IG-88 droid, which are a handful I think that we have. The stories can change because now they have the options to put those in there. So it's really cool to basically play it and then not know what's coming next. Because you may be thinking, oh, we're almost to the end of the objective, and then something crazy happens. So um, I think also what helped us is we started playing D&D like kind of right before we got interested in this game. And so learning how to be as flexible like this Imperial Assault is with D&D, it was really nice to kind of have a new type of background to board games that makes us more open to understanding the more complex ones. If it's kind of a weird way to put it, but it was like a comfort saying it'll be okay if you play this game. It looks really cool, so try it, kind of a thing. Because I had seen this board game for a long time, and like I said, between the monstrosity of the box and the pieces and the price tag, I always stayed away. So yeah, Imperial Assault is a big one that we like. We've only played it a couple of times just because there's some like what will happen is we get all these pieces out and then we'll say we'll play it a couple nights and then we'll have like a game night with friends and we gotta put everything away because we need a table to play board games. So um it's one of those where it can be a bit much to upkeep all the time. Just tells you we have to invest in a board game table, like one that you can put another table on top or something. They're really cool. So yeah, that caps off our top three. And our final segment here, we are going to talk about some like honorable mentions slash ones that we really look forward to playing next. So stick around and we'll talk about those very soon. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of the Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one, so please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. All right, welcome back for our final segment here. We're going to talk about some honorable mentions slash ones that we look forward to still playing. I will say, just to kind of put it out there, we have way too many board games. So that's why we have a handful that we haven't played yet, even though we really look forward to. Because a handful of these most anticipated ones that I'm going to talk about are still in the shrink wrap and they're on our shelf. Just because, we have so many, we play them in whatever order. But the first game that I want to mention that is on my uh, looking forward to play is Star Wars Villainous. We are very big fans of the Villainous uh, series of games. And what those are, there's obviously the one I'm talking about now is Star Wars, but there's also Disney, which started it all. And then there's also Marvel as well. And we've kind of noticed that there's some different rules between each of the three realms. I've seen just on the back of the Star Wars game some stuff that's a little bit different. But ultimately, the thing that happens between the three of them is that you pick a villain to play as, and then you have to be the first one to carry out your villain goal. So, like for instance, see, I think I have one. Thought I had one pulled up. Uh, Darn me for not having it pulled up. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk about one of the other games that we have played to give an example. Uh, for instance, we played one of the Disney villain ones, and for I think her name is Madame Tremaine, the girl from Cinderella. Her goal was to basically trap Cinderella, have her daughters get dressed for the ball, and have one of her own daughters marry the prince instead of Cinderella. So it's kind of an example of what to do. In Marvel, I used Ultron recently playing with friends, and the goal was to upgrade all the way up to Age of Ultron armor, so that you were like the perfect robotic specimen. Um, for Star Wars, it would be just whatever relates to these characters. Um, I cannot attest to what they actually are just because I haven't seen them.
For
But
Kylo Ren, his objective is to commit to the dark side of the Force.
well, there you go. Maybe he has to like kill Han Solo and Rey or something. Um, just because I remember those are some things he did in the movies. Um, so yeah, there you pick a villain, you have to carry out your villainous agenda. But the wrench that's thrown into all of it is that the people that are playing against you can do something which is called fate. And what fate is that they get to start throwing some heroes into your realm to mess with you. So, like for Kylo Ren, you might have Rey that comes up. You might have Poe that pops up that's messing in your realm. Or if you are, I think,
Darth Vader's objective is to defeat Luke Skywalker.
oh, that's pretty straightforward. So I guess if Luke comes out of the Fate deck and he defeats Luke Skywalker, probably the end of it. There's probably more to it. You probably have to like bring Luke to the Emperor and then defeat him or something along those lines.
I think for this one, it's as straightforward as it sounds, just based on what the card reads. Some of them are more complicated than that, but for Darth Vader, what I believe the wrench thrown in, as you say, is that if there's other heroes in the realm, they probably say that you have to defeat them first
Mhm.
before you can defeat Luke Skywalker, or that you have to defeat them together. Sometimes there can be power ups for the heroes instead of just adding heroes to the realm. Like somebody might get an extra blaster or a shield of some sort that can kind of protect them and make them more difficult to attack, if that makes sense.
To me, it does because I played the game. um, yeah, and like if you're Moff Gideon, then Mando might come out as one of the heroes that are trying to stop you from your objective. But yeah, you're right. Defeat Luke Skywalker. I can see that right on there. Each character, each villain gets their own board, and you have like four separate main places that that person has been a part of. So I have Vader's actually pulled up, and his is Mustafar, Death Star, Cloud City, and Emperor's Throne Room. I think that's what it says. It's kind of blurry. Um, but yeah, uh,
So when you're on one of those squares, it tells you four different actions that you can take during your turn. If there's heroes covering up actions, and by that I mean a hero card might be covering up two of the actions. So certain squares you might only be able to do two actions during your turn until that hero's defeated. Um, some of these actions can include playing a card, obtaining power, as they call it, which is their form of currency, playing those fate cards to try to wreck other players' games, or discarding cards if you're trying to shuffle through looking for a certain card in your deck. Sometimes you can discard your hand in order to get some new cards in your hand because you are limited to four cards, I believe, in your hand or five cards at a time, unless you get certain power ups that sometimes allow you more. There's lots of different things in this game that almost kind of make it a different game to play every time you play it. But the cool thing is that it doesn't matter who chooses what character. You can all choose whatever character you want and let it commingle. It doesn't have to be one certain game that everybody has to play.
I can see I pulled up another one for Asajj Ventress. Her objective is to complete 3 missions, and it looks like she has like 3 mission cards that have different things on them that she has to complete throughout the game. So if you complete 3 of her missions, then you win the game as Ventress. I would say that the games are fairly balanced amongst each other. Like when you pick a different character, you do not have to pick the same character in like you don't have to take them all from the same box. You can mix characters across different expansions and stuff, which is really cool. I really like that aspect of it.
As long as you stay in the same universe, I believe. I
Right,
don't think you could choose a Marvel character and then a Star Wars character and go at it.
right. Yeah, we have to be civilized, right? We have to stay in the same realms. Yeah. So that is one honorable looking forward to mention that I have. What is one that you have, Sarah?
I'm gonna go with Star Wars Talisman. This is one that we have not played yet. We played, was it a Disney version or a Kingdom Hearts
Kingdom
version we
Hearts.
played before? We played a Kingdom Hearts version before, that's right. It's a little fuzzy in my head in terms of what you're actually playing, but my kind of general understanding, because we've only played the Kingdom Hearts one once, and even that was a few years ago, is that it is a mammoth size board for you to travel around. I believe I'm going to call it 2 layers just because there's like an outer path and an inner path that you can travel between. There's a ton of different little cardboard tokens that you're trying to pair up. And that's about all I really remember from it. Talisman is usually kind of like a little token, right? It's something that you hold on to, right? So that's kind of why there's all these little tokens everywhere that you're collecting. You're collecting talismans.
Yeah,
I
there's
don't really remember the objective of the game. Do you?
so it depends on the version of the game. So like with Kingdom Hearts, the final objective is going to be different from the Star Wars one, but the thing that they have in common is that you're supposed to get to the center of the board and do the objective that's on the center of the board. Because there's I'm counting 3 layers outside of the center. So you start on the outside and you work your way in. It kind of okay. No, never mind. I was gonna say it kind of looks like they're separated in trilogies, but they're not.
I feel like I remember you having to collect power-ups because if you got to the inner layer too early in the game, your character was way underpowered and would have to basically start over.
Okay, so this is probably what I'm gathering here from the Star Wars one, because what I remember from Kingdom Hearts is that, like you said, you have to gather a bunch of power-ups so that when you go to the middle, you fight Ansem or Xehanort, whoever, from the first game, which is the ending of the game for the first one when you fight Ansem. And for Star Wars, the center of this board is the Emperor's throne on Exegol. So my guess is that you're, going around the board, as you said, gathering power-ups so that you can go and destroy the Emperor at the end. One of the interesting things about this game is, like you said, Talisman, a little tokens. There's 12 different characters you can pick from, and there are like little bust figures of each of these characters. And it doesn't matter whether you pick someone that's on the light side or if you pick somebody that's on the dark side. They all have their individual like special abilities, but what makes sense here is that if you're playing as a character from the light side, then you're trying to gain power to take out the Sith. Whereas if you were somebody on the dark side, like, I don't know, Darth Maul or something, you're trying to get to the Emperor to take him out to be the number one Sith. So it's kind of cool that they have that flexibility of, both sides of the force that you can choose from. And then the ultimate goal, like I said, based on what I'm seeing, I believe is destroying the Emperor. Because that's actually a common goal between the Sith and the Jedi, is that they want to take out the Emperor, for the two reasons that I said. It looks like the characters that you can pick from for the different 12, there is, I think, the seventh sister. She's the Inquisitor from Rebels. There's Kylo Ren, the Grand Inquisitor, Count Dooku, Darth Maul, Darth Vader, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, Luke. I think that's Anakin and Rey.
It's quite a widespread of characters. I like that it goes all across the different trilogies of movies.
Yeah, and even just the TV shows, because like I mentioned, that there's a Rebels character in here, a couple of
Yeah.
them. Because I think this came out before Kenobi, so the Grand Inquisitor token is the one from the Rebel show. It is not the one from uh, Kenobi. Kingdom Hearts and Star Wars are not the only talisman games out there. There is also Harry Potter. So if you're more into Harry Potter, you can do that too. My guess is that your objective is to take out Voldemort. That's, I think, a pretty safe bet. Like Sarah said, we've only played the game, the game in general one time, which was with Kingdom Hearts. We played it once because, like she said, it was a huge board. It took a lot of time, probably more than Monopoly. So, I mean, do the math on that one. I think one more game we want to sneak in here that we want to have an honorable mention that we have played is the Star Wars Sabacc game that came out. I think depending on which ones you buy, there's probably a slight difference in the rules. But I actually have the one I'm talking about right here. So I can actually put this on camera. This is the one I'm talking about, Star Wars Han Solo card game. It just says Han Solo card game, I think, to not have like poker type influences, because it's more for younger people or younger crowd, I would say.
The
Um,
shape of the box is actually the same shape as a Sabacc card, so I think that's pretty neat.
yeah, and it teaches you how to play Sabacc and stuff. Well, at least like I said, maybe a little less complicated version of it. But it was really cool because I actually use this in my classroom. I have an assignment that's built around Sabacc because it's essentially just adding integers. The goal of the game is to have the most cards and have your numbers be the closest one that adds up to zero. So the whoever's closest to zero would win. And then there's obviously a handful of rules to divide up tiebreaker type scenarios. Um, but it's a very cool game to not only just play in general, but also, like in my case, play with my students. It's a very, very good way to teach um, adding integers, which is also very interesting because you learn as a teacher that students are a little bit quicker to learn their adding and subtracting of integers when winning is involved. So if they can beat the person next to them, they will sharpen their skills so that they make sure that they win the game.
I know I wish that my teachers had fun games like this and this isn't a knock on my teachers, this is more a knock on, they didn't have the tools because this game wasn't really, Sabacc has been out for a long time, but they didn't have playable games that you could have in your classroom until the last couple of years. So I think that's really cool to be able to incorporate that in education.
Same. Before we leave here, one last brief mention that I'm going to do is we recently bought the Star Wars Clone Wars game, which is supposedly based off the Pandemic board game. We have not played Pandemic. We have not played the Clone Wars game, but it looked awesome, so we had to pick it up. So that one came out within the last couple of months. So if you've played it, let us know in the comments what you think of it, because that's one that we look forward to. But we're going to wrap it up here. We talked about our experience with Star Wars board games in general. We talked about our top 3 favorites that we've played so far. And then we've also talked about some honorable mentions / ones that we really look forward to playing very soon. If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you hear more of our Shoot the Sheev podcasts in the future. Typically, they drop on Wednesdays, and we just have some random topic of the week. One of the cool things that we would like to do is get some of your input. If there's something that you guys think would be interesting for us to talk about, leave it in the comments, and then we will see how it fits into our schedule, because we do have some of them that are planned out. Drop us a like if you like the video, and like I said, drop us a comment. Let us know what you want to see in the future, and also let us know about what board games that you enjoy from Star Wars. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.